thought you believed Gladmane when he said you did.
Why would he lie?
Because he's afraid that the two of you together could move in and take over his resort.
And if I'm telling you he said it, you know it's the absolute truth because...
You never lie!
I'd make a joke about why that's bullshit, but I know someone else will just do it for me. Viva Las Pegasus. Wow, that makes two new locations in a season that was supposed to explore Equestria. Or maybe that's just bad marketing on Hasbro's part, I'm not sure. Fluttershy and Applejack are called to Las Pegasus to solve a friendship problem which doesn't seem to suit them since they're not used to big and large crowds or being in really big parties. They look around a local hotel for the friendship problem to be solved only to see that it's Flim and Flam that may be in need of their advice. Refusing to believe the Flim Flam brothers would need her help, Applejack lurks around to search for other potential problems and finds them in the performers for the hotel. Soon enough, the two learn that all of the friendship problems they encounter have one thing in common: Gladmane. Convinced that Gladmane is manipulating everyone to work against each other to stay on top of business, Jack and Flutters must work with the Flim Flam brothers to expose Gladmane for his corrupt ways. Something that I do like about the episode is its atmosphere. The episode takes advantage of its stylized setting and uses it to give us backgrounds with all sorts of bright colors. They really seem to pop, and they vary throughout the story. The hotel itself is even made out to look like a small carnival or an amusement park with all of these games and attractions. They're practically all over the place, and finding each one is a fun Easter egg. It makes the setting very vibrant and seem like a fun place to be. Even the supporting characters have these designs and color palettes that really support the style that its setting is going for. And the voice acting on them is good too. There's this nice variety in their accents that fits the model and the appearance of each of them. I'm going to come across as very mean for this, but the main gripe I have with this episode is its story. Not because it had bad pacing, I thought it was paced in a way that was evenly done so nothing was too fast or too slow. And not because any of the characters are uninteresting, I thought they each had some upbeat personalities except for one in particular, which I'll get into momentarily. My gripe with the story is that it just feels too typical, and there's a number of things that don't make sense. I had a feeling from the moment I heard of Gladmane that he was going to be some kind of bad guy, and the dialogue that follows during certain points just makes it so obvious. They could have at least tried to make it more subtle, but they needed to give away Gladmane's facade by saying things like, if these two weren't fighting all the time, they would be doing something that would endanger his business. Oh, and they have to say that they only started fighting after they moved their business to Gladmane's hotel. Even the episode subconsciously points out how obvious it is with Fluttershy and AJ figuring it out so early on, and even then there's a number of elements that just didn't fit for the narrative that they were going for. For example, if it was so obvious that Gladmane was manipulating everyone, why did nobody question it before Flutters and Jack showed up? Why couldn't the ponies arguing try to talk to each other better to clear up what sounded like a simple misunderstanding? If they trusted each other so much before they came here, why would they suddenly lose that trust just because Gladmane said so about X and Y? Did they ever think about going to Gladmane to work out these issues? Even the things that they're arguing about seem like petty things to argue about. Like they could have easily tried to negotiate to each other about their acts, so why didn't they try it? If they're really being this quick to judge just because Gladmane is so influential, then it shows how easily their trust can be broken. So how did they never get into any kind of problems with each other before this? We know that this is somewhat unlikely because we've seen how well Flim and Flam have worked together as con artists before this episode. And if all it took to foil Gladmane was to walk into his office and trick him into revealing himself while holding onto the intercom button, how would that have even worked if Gladmane wasn't talking directly into the microphone? How powerful is it if both his and AJ's voices went through it if they weren't directly talking into the intercom? It's questions like these that end up going unclarified that are really distracting, and they just pull you out of the immersion. And I might have even looked over some of these questions if Gladmane wasn't such a paper-thin villain. He is such a boring, shallow, and lackluster character with the most typical motivation you can think of for this scenario. I'm very sure there's greedy businessmen like this in real life, but it doesn't make for an interesting character. All they had to do was give him a better motivation, like a more interesting reason as to why he wants to prevent someone else from taking over his resort, or leaving it to provide less entertainment for its guests. There's a whole bunch of ways they could have worked around this to make this aspect of the episode so much better, and the one we actually got just feels really, really boring. I guess I could say that this episode isn't all that bad. There's some nice things I appreciate, such as Gladmane recognizing the main six and even referring to Twilight Sparkle as the Princess of Friendship, which means that the people across Equestria are actually starting to recognize the ones who have been rescuing them and making themselves so well known. I like the Flim Flam brothers for still sticking to their charming manipulative tactics, even doing so by using one of their tricks in the ending. And like I said before, the atmosphere is really captivating, making this hotel look like a lot of fun, and it made for a good place to set the episode. But it all feels like it does very little to strengthen the actual story that's just too typical and too void of any real excitement. I guess Viva Las Pegasus just wasn't my kind of vacation spot. I can't say it was a really bad episode, it just wasn't very interesting for me. There's a lot of other episodes this season that I'd watch again before this one, so I guess that means I won't be coming back to Las Pegasus anytime soon. MisAnthro Pony, over and out.